start? What becomes the reference text for this? Do you go back to the novel? Do you go to the film? Do you just throw it all out the window and start with your own vision?
Oh no, we're well, the movie. We're using. I think Nicholas Meyer gave us a beautiful blueprint, a beautiful one of my favorite films of all time that I loved and watched. And I read the book, Carl Alexander. Which pretty much followed the movie. I think they were all sort of done in conjunction, and we're just going to try to honor it to the best of our ability because he laid down a beautiful film. Which in fact is our pilot is an updated version of that, where we but we sort of changed it around a little bit, sort of to lay the groundwork for the series, because we're going to take it so much. That's the starting point, and then we go into the mythology that we're creating, which is what happens now. Now that we sort of have Jack the Ripper unleashed in modern day New York, H.G. Wells on his tail, and this young woman who sort of comes between the two of them. He sort of is the linchpin that sort of serves as the linchpin between the two of them. And as we start to build into not just the time machine, but the island of Dr. Moreau, the Invisible Man, and and ultimately the War of the Worlds. Now, what does that look like in a modern day context? And that's, and so we sort of play, that's the science fiction of the show. It's, it's a little bit of that 5 minutes in the future. It'll be very sort of grounded, but it will show us what was the inspiration for all of those great stories that H.G. Wells is ultimately going to have to go back in 1893 and write.
How much of a role will time travel play after the initial jump to the future?
Well, yeah, that's like a great question, because everyone thinks it's a weekly time travel show is what we've been getting, but it's not. It's it's about H.G. It's this sort of big epic. The base of the show takes place in New York City, in modern day, and they time travel. I'd say the first season, I think we have maybe 4. We time travel about. I think we have about 4 planned. Don't quote me. I mean, I don't know if I could give or take one. Might be 5, might be 3. I don't know. But right now, I know it's 4 for sure. We have planned in the 4 different time periods that we'll go to. But it's it's not a weekly time. It's the show incorporates time travel. Yeah.
What do you think was the most difficult thing to adjust when you jump to modern times?
It's really loud.
It's really
That's actually
loud.
in the second episode. He's like, it's just so loud. I think, what I love about H.G. Wells, the writer, and what I was always drawn to is, all of his books dealt with sort of the good and bad of humanity in regard to science and technology. And I think now we live in an age of so much technology that there's a good side to all of this, and there's a bad side to all of this. And I think that's what's going to be sort of the biggest, with regard to every ounce of technology he comes in contact with, the good of it and the bad of it. And I think that's sort of the fun of the show, and that's what kind of makes it timely and interesting.
When you saw that, there are other shows where time travel is at least an element.
How does that happen?
Yeah.
How does it happen? I don't know.
Were you bummed? Were you like, damn it?
No, I did, but I will tell you why. It's like I've always wondered how it happens, and now I can honestly tell you, I don't know. It just happens.
It's just one huge coincidence.
Well, do you think that just there hadn't been any time travel shows, and then suddenly everybody? Because I've been talking about this with Warner Brothers for a couple of years. This isn't didn't just come out of nowhere. We've been talking. I found out it was in the library. Warner Brothers and I we talked about it as a feature film. Then we talked about it as a TV series, and so I've been having this conversation with Warner Brothers for 3 years.
Why do you think we never tire of time travel and the kind of opportunities that
Or 2 years, maybe. Anyway.
that gives us?
I don't know. I personally, I think time travel is fun. It's wish fulfillment. Where could you go? If you could go to the future, if you go to the past, what could you change? What could you alter? Could you affect the future? Who would you like to see? We've been asking that, we were asking the question, what would you do if you could go back in time or go in the future? And I thought you had the best. She goes, I'd like to go back just enough in time, just before Apple blew up and buy stock.
Make that Apple money. Set myself up, set the bank account, come back, and live a
Live a set life.
Then do theater in the Village
And
forever.
then do theater.
That Google action too.
Right, that Google action, that would be great. Or make it easy for yourself and just pick the right Powerball numbers. There you go. There you go. One
I know
time
we've
and
got
you're set.
I know we've got a bag. We got a villain in the piece who, you know, his idea is, well, let's just go get the stock report 3 days from now and just go and just keep doing that enough till you got $1 billion and just call it a day. You know, so there's a lot of people who have all these ideas of what to do with the time machine if they had it. So.
In a broad sense, why do you think we've been, as a culture, we're unable to let the Jack the Ripper story go? Is it because he was famous? It's the ultimate cold case. Is that it?
You know, he is a very fascinating character, and also he's just become the mystique of who was he. Because you know, anytime it's a mystery, you've never identified him, we don't know who he is. I think that is part of the intrigue as well, because you're left to wonder. And there's been all this talk that he might have been a doctor, he might have been a surgeon. And in our world, we have made him a surgeon, John Stevenson, and he's a brilliant surgeon who is friends with H.G. Wells in our story. And I've always been, you know, everyone's fascinated. He's the ultimate serial killer. But what I'm really interested in doing in a modern context is, you know, he was a really violent killer in 1893. And, you know, I'm not really interested in doing the serial killer thing. I've kind of been down that road before. What I'm interested in doing is if he came to modern day and saw this violence all everywhere, all around him, he might get a little bored with it. What does someone, you know, how does Jack the Ripper reinvent himself? If he had to do a makeover, what would that look like? And who would he become? If he could become anyone he could possibly be in the whole world and just change his identity, who would it be?
Yeah, because it's not as new, it's not as thrilling for him.
Yeah, he feels like, you know, in my day I was a freak. Today I'm a bit of an amateur. And I'm not so, he gets a little bored. You know, killing doesn't seem like as exciting as it used to be. It's not so unique anymore. And so he tries to reinvent himself. Now, does he try for the good, or does he try for the bad? And I think that'll sort of be the push-pull of his character through the first season, which is fun. And you know, because we want to have fun with this show. It's more in line with sort of an adult Vampire Diaries than it is with sort of the more darker stuff. It's going to be fun.
How did Josh
Romantic. It's a big, huge love story.
How did Josh get involved, and what do you think he brings to that?
Josh brings Josh, and he came in and auditioned, and I was like, is that the guy from Revenge? Boy, I didn't know he could do a British accent. And then I was like, oh, I was wrong. And then he's really good. I have his audition on my. I actually was looking at. Yeah, I have his audition on my phone because I was like, I can't believe it. He's really spectacular. He's such a great actor. I don't think I don't know if I didn't really watch. I only watched the first season of Revenge, so I don't know like where his character went. But I have no idea the level of acting. This man is he's so wonderful. He's delicious. He's so evil and delicious and fun, and he's having a good old time. He's the perfect counterbalance to Freddie, who's such the gentleman, and the prince, and you know the heroic H.G. Wells. And then on top of that, we have this modern career gal who gets in the middle of it all, and just sort of puts them both in their place.
Not a bad place to be in, if I might add.
Yeah.
So you were saying about how he was going to remake himself in modern day. It seems like there'd be more of a psychological element to his master plan or his scheme. Is that something that's going to come into play?
What do you mean?
Like when you said that he was going to, when he was in modern day, you keep saying he, when Jack the Ripper is in modern day times, and he's saying I'm an amateur in all of this. It seems like there would be more. I'm almost seeing like a psychological thing where it's almost like he's like Hannibal Lecter vibe almost. Is there a little bit to that on the character? Is that something that's
Yeah, I think what's happening with him is it's all psychological for him. You know, because he's a surgeon who understands like, you know, the idea of a psychopath and the mental disorder that he suffers from was not as well explored back then. So when he Googles himself for the first time, it's quite a wonderful moment. In the second episode, she's trying to explain she's telling him who he is, and she's saying, you know, you're Jack the Ripper. And he's like, huh? She goes, you're famous. Because he's convinced H.G. Wells told you all this stuff. And she goes, you can Google yourself. And she pulls out a laptop, and when he starts reading about himself, the psychology of that, he gets really he starts reading about his psychology and what the other doctors had said about him, and about how he had a hatred for women, and that it might have been a mother issue, or there might have been an abuse, all the different things, and he gets quite disturbed and upset by it all, and particularly the lies. And he just falls. I mean, so we sort of take a new take on Jack the Ripper. It's kind of fun, but it's all about the psychology of him and watching him explore that, because he doesn't, the crazy man doesn't know he's crazy.
Given he's also one of the first celebrities, do you think then this is a study on fame as much as anything else?
Well, I mean, imagine that his identity was never known, so he's an anonymous famous person. That can't sit too well. So he might want to be a little more famous now.
Yeah. Take
So
credit for what he did.
So you're absolutely right. It might send him on a brand new journey.
Did you do a lot of other research to make it plausible to take a guy from that time and place it in our time? Because, they say if you actually did that, they would die just of the air that we're breathing because of pollution. I was just wondering, all that aside, how did you...
Well, we're not going to go into the science
No,
of it.
no, I'm just
So
kidding
we're just
about
going to have to wink on that one,
Yeah.
do a wink on that one. Because the tone of the show is a very playful, fun romp of a show. So we don't get into the science of that. But we do play with sort of the, every single thing they come in contact with.
Yeah.
The phone, the air, the loud, the noise, the traffic, the pollution. And so all of those things, all the technology and all the sort of the day-to-day, just the clothes and how they fit and how they wear them, and all, the grooming and all that, we do sort of go there.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Last question.
Genesis, can you talk about your characters?
Jane Walker is an assistant curator to the Museum of Space and Science, where the exhibition of a time machine, which they think it's all a replica, but it turns out to be the time machine when he travels in time to present time. And at first, this is a very career-driven woman. She does not want the museum, anything to go down, and then two people coming through the time machine, so she automatically thinks it's two actors trying to mess up with her museum. And
Yeah, she thinks they're trespassing.
yeah, she thinks they're trespassing, and she's very offended by this, and she thinks that they're trying to sabotage her. But it turns out to be H.G. Wells, and she is just completely taken aback because she's such a fan. She does work in this museum, but apart from that, she's taken aback by how genuinely nice and what a gentleman he is, which is something she's not used to with dating life in New York and modern day city, when she's been on Tinder dates that go nowhere, and he doesn't call back after he says I'll call you. So it's just that kind of thing where she's genuinely falling for someone and he's falling for her, and it's a struggle because it's her career, it's her life, but really it doesn't fulfill her and make her happy. So she decides to fulfill her destiny in helping HG solve all of these things, and it's a bigger purpose for her in life.
And also, it's about her empowering herself, and I think finding her identity. And I think she's going to reflect what H.G. Wells kept saying, that the good in humanity, the good in people, be the best that you can be, and you can save the world 1 minute at a time, 1 second at a time, one person at a time. And I think she's going to be that central character whose strength just sort of embodies the entire show. Because it's, I think at its core, we're a show on ABC, and I just want a very strong female character to sort of, she kind of saves the day, quite frankly. You've got a bumbling H.G. Wells who doesn't know how to drive a car. You're going to need a very strong person by his side to help him maneuver all of that. And in the process, she finds herself and who she's meant to be, and how she's supposed to live in this world, and how she's supposed to stand. And I just think it's a wonderful character. If you had to say this is the character. Like, if you're watching the show, the window is in through Jane, and it's all about, finding our identity and fulfilling our destiny, who and what we're supposed to be. I think.
Yes, definitely.
Because we're all just individuals.
Trying to make it in this hard world.